A giant iceberg just broke off on the ice shelf in Antarctica.
Yeah, so scientists first discovered significant cracks a decade ago, but the last 2 years have been two major breaks. First Alert meteorologist Justin Hobbs is showing us whether this could only make rising sea level and climate change worse.
Take a look at this massive piece of ice that is now drifting away from continental Antarctica into the Weddell Sea. This all happened on Sunday when the Chasm 1 crack officially broke away from the Brunt ice shelf. Now, how big is this piece of ice that's drifting out to sea? Well, it's the size of Greater London. That is 600 square miles. And we can actually see the moment it happened because it was captured on satellite imagery. And this is processed by the European Space Agency. Watch right here on the top of your screen. You're going to see this piece of ice holding on by the last thread. And then on January 22nd, it broke off. And by the 24th, it was already drifting out into that sea. And we've known that this was going to happen. It's been holding on to a thread for a while. There's October this past year, and there's January 24th. So just 2 days after it broke off, we're already seeing the water between that iceberg and the shelf. But scientists who have been down here in this part of Antarctica have been studying this piece of ice, and they've known that this was going to happen. In fact, they had to move the British research station actually out of the way because it was going to be part of this. So they've moved it out of the way, and they've also determined that this piece breaking off is actually not caused by climate change. It's not quite the case for all of Antarctica. In fact, the peninsula and western Antarctica, they've been feeling the influences of warming surface temperatures and warming ocean temperatures. But right here where the Brunt ice shelf is, that area has not been seeing that substantial of a warm. In fact, mostly been staying below freezing. So now that this piece of ice is down in the water, you're probably wondering, are sea levels about to start to rise? Well, let me suppress this water and suppress your fears, because that's just not quite the case, and let me explain why. So as we take a look at the science of what exactly has happened, an ice sheet is actually attached to land. You can see that right there. It's still attached to land. They're also known as continental glaciers, and glaciers, they flow like rivers. So over the centuries, this piece of ice has naturally been flowing out into the waters, and it's been creating what we call an ice shelf, hence the Brunt ice shelf. Now, the ice shelf is only being supported by the waters, and the volume of that ice that's down in the water has already replaced that water. That's known as Archimedes' principle. So now that this piece of ice has went from part of an ice shelf and broke off and become an iceberg, you can see that, well, it's really not causing a big change. Laws of buoyancy, most of it that was already in the water, is down in the water. So we're not going to see a substantial rise in waters because of this breakoff. For more science on this, you can head over to our website at nbc-2.com. In the studio, Justin Hobbs, NBC2.
And now we're all a little smarter.
Yeah, that was a great explanation. It's kind of a complex thought, but really, I mean, things change on the Earth, and sometimes they're from climate change, and sometimes they're not. And this was one of those things where it just naturally happened.